Okay, so you either are one or you've met one. The type of person who says they're desensitized to horror movies. The person who says, oh, horror movies don't really frighten me anymore. They're kind of lame. They're all the same. They're all just not really that scary. And I know because I used to be one of those people. And I'm not proud of it. Well, let me tell you something. It is all just one big lie. So keep watching until the end of this video so that I can explain everything about why I think that you are not actually desensitized to horror. Hi, welcome back to the Cozy Coffee Corner here at Flickspresso, where we will be unraveling cinema one sip at a time. I agree that a lot of horror movies nowadays are kind of milked out. You get the same recipe, you get the same formula again and again and again, and it's starting to get kind of boring. For example, the subgenre of Exorcism movies. I mean no shade to The Exorcist from 1973 because that was actually a groundbreaking movie at the time. I'm talking about all the movies that came after it. There are just so many horror movies nowadays that kind of hold on to the formula of there's a protagonist, usually it's a girl, and they do something stupid, and then there's a demon inside of them, or something evil, something other, something that possesses them, right? And then the entire plot is about getting this demon thing out of her, or him. Usually there's a lot of jump scares and scary scenes and tension moments and scary music, and then eventually the demon gets driven out, and at the end we're all happy, the problem is solved, right? That's usually how these type of movies go, and every time I watch an exorcism movie, I've actually stopped watching exorcism movies for this reason. I don't even get the upbeat heart rate anymore. But I do like myself some exorcism movies that take a different spin on it. For example, The Possession of Hannah Grace, which is widely considered to be a bad movie. At least the exorcism happens in the beginning, and the rest of the movie is a consequence of the exorcism. So the story is about a morgue employee who receives the still possessed body of a young girl, and the scary thing about the movie is that this corpse is basically crawling around, having a life of its own, while trying to murder the morgue employee. I don't know, it's been a while since I watched it. So, and even though it's considered to be a bad movie, I still have to give it the points for finally being something different than usual. And this is just one of the subgenres of horror where I just feel like it's not really my thing. This stuff doesn't scare me anymore. So I really do understand people who say, oh, I'm desensitized to horror, I don't think horror is scary anymore nowadays. But then this movie came out earlier this year and it was called Sting. You may have heard of it, you may not, but it's basically about a spider, some alien spider, and it looks like a normal house spider, but then it just grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and it just doesn't stop growing. And me, who went into the movie thinking, oh, it's a horror movie, it's probably not gonna be that scary. I don't know, it just touched me in a way where I was still just in my seat, just kind of holding on to the, you know, and just being like, oh God. I was utterly disgusted by the visuals in this movie. It's because I suffer from arachnophobia. It's not as bad as it used to be, but watching this movie proved to me that there are still horror movies that can frighten you to your core because it's directly related to your biggest fears. So for example, other people have, I don't know, clowns as their biggest fear, and they may be watching it and then they may get scared, and then that movie might frighten them to their core because they're afraid of clowns, just to name an example. And so for me it is spiders. One time when I was younger, it was weekend and I was on the couch with my parents and we were just like scrolling through channels and just, you know, seeing what's happening right now. And one of these channels, there was a Lord of the Rings movie playing. And then it was exactly this one scene playing where this huge spider was going to try and eat, and then, like, I'm trying to recall it right now, but I don't want to say it's childhood trauma, but I definitely saw that scene at a much younger age than I should have. Because this big spider was just grabbing Frodo and just kind of curling him up into this spider web ball thing, and then he like died or something, but then he was resurrected later. I don't know, I didn't pay much attention. And then we zapped away from the channel. So for years I had no idea if that was the ending of the movie, if he actually died in that scene. You should watch the Lord of the Rings movies for yourself, because I'm not gonna spoil here if he lived or died after that scene. But I was already kind of afraid of bugs, but this did not make it better. Let's put it like that. Another example is the Harry Potter movie, what was it called? Chamber of Secrets. It was the second one in the franchise. And there was this Aragog scene where where Ron and Harry go into this scary forest, and then they have to talk to this great, wise, what type of spider was it? Was it a huntsman, but like much bigger? I don't even know what type of spider it was, but it was big, and that in itself is terrifying. But then the creators of this movie, they had to make close-ups of this spider's face, and every time I saw that scene, I just had to kind of go like, is it over? I can't watch this. Like my body gives this response of like, but this just proves my point that a movie that is directly related to one of your fears will automatically be more scary to you. Even though that doesn't apply in all situations, because another subgenre of horror movies is called home invasion movies. You know, talking about someone who's had their home broken into once in 2010 or something. When I was 8 or 9 years old, when I was at a very vulnerable age in my life, that's stuff that you don't forget easily, right? That's something that, even though it's been so long ago, it's always kind of like back there. And still, movies like The Purge, You're Next, Help the Strangers even. And still, these movies don't terrify me as much as spider movies do. Because spiders are just crusty, awful, nasty, ew. It's like, spiders are fine, but just don't touch me. Home invaders are a much bigger threat than a spider is, unless you live in Australia. And if you're watching a horror movie that is not directly related to one of your fears, then you can still be scared, because the movie can still be scary even though it's not one of your fears, because it would be an insane statement to make that you can only be afraid of movies that are directly related to one of your fears. Other movies that I think are very terrifying are the types of movies that aren't really scary in itself, but it's the situation that these characters have put themselves into. It's what makes the movie scary. And I'm gonna use the Blair Witch Project as an example here. I think the Blair Witch Project, it came out in the late 90s or the early 2000s. It came out in a time where you couldn't really find on the internet whether everything was real or not. The first time I watched the Blair Witch Project, I was home alone, lights off, sound on, volume up a lot, and that just made the experience much better. I'm glad I made that decision. And then later I watched it with a bunch of friends of mine, and after the movie finished, I asked them, what did you think of it? And one of them said, I didn't really think it was that scary. And I asked her, how did you not find this scary? I thought it was scary. How did you? Then she explained, like, and this is not a spoiler, by the way. I mean, you can skip it if you want. I'm giving you the chance to skip it right now. But in my opinion, it's not a spoiler. But her answer to me was, because there was no witch in it, because there wasn't music in it, because it was all this shaky cam footage. I don't know, it didn't really do much for me. I'm not trying to put shade on anyone for having this opinion. I think it's totally okay to have your own opinion, and if you did not think it was scary, then that's your thing. I personally thought it was scary, so I disagree. It's not like the visual effects were very scary, because there were no visual effects in the movie. To me, it adds more to the realism. You gotta keep in mind that the marketing for this movie was done in a way where people thought that the actors in the movie actually went missing, that they actually died, you know? Because the marketing posters of this movie were like missing posters of these 3 actors. You just gotta imagine, you're going to the woods to shoot a documentary, do your thing, and then you leave again, right? Except you can't leave because you get lost. Your temper is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. You know, you just want to get out of there, you're tired, you just want to go home. You know, it's cold outside and you're running out of food, you're running out of... And then you have to camp in the woods at night, and then at night you hear all these laughing children or kind of cackling or whatever. And then in the morning you wake up and you open your tent. And then in the morning you wake up and there's like a pile of stones that was not there the night before. And there's stick figures hanging in the trees that obviously didn't grow that way naturally. So you know that there's something stalking you, but you can't see what it is. And you're there for days on end, and you're running out of food, and you're starting to get scared, and you're getting in fights with your friends the entire time. It's like the mood is not exactly a healthy one either. You just know you're never gonna see your family and your friends again. So the level of dread is also through the roof. Through this entire journey, you record everything on a VHS camera. Then you literally die and someone finds your footage, only to show it into theaters for a broader audience so that everyone can know your story, right? Only for people to then say, oh, I didn't really think it was that scary because there was no witch, because there was no music. It's like, that's the entire point, isn't it? The fact that it's as realistic as it is. The fact that it looks like something that you could have made yourself at home, right? I think that in itself is what makes the movie terrifying. No, but eventually it was revealed that these actors are in fact still alive and that everybody is safe and that it was all staged. But there was a brief period of time that people didn't know that people actually thought that it was real. Imagine the fear of the people in these theaters. Maybe I should just do a separate video on the Blair Witch Project because I have so much to tell you about it. Anyway, just to wrap up my story, I think you're not actually desensitized to horror. I just think you haven't, and you can take this as relationship advice or as a fact, I just think you haven't found the right one yet. If you really want to go into a horror movie thinking, I want to get scared, I want this horror movie to scare me, here's one tip: just turn off the lights and double the volume, at least double it or maybe triple it, as long as your sound bars will survive it. That first of all will help. And second of all, imagine if you put yourself into the situation that the protagonists are getting themselves into. What would you do in a situation like that? Go brainstorm about things like that, you know? And maybe it makes the movie less frightening for you, but in some situations it might make it scarier for you. And third of all, if you really want to find a good horror movie that suits you, think of your biggest fears. What is it that you're most afraid of? Is it spiders? Is it clowns? Is it home invaders? Is it anything else? Try to find those movies. Watch them with the lights off and the sound up. I can guarantee you that you will have a great time. Anyway, that's it for this video today. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know down here in the comments what movies you are most afraid of. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and then I'll be seeing you next time.